You unlocked your phone 11 minutes ago. You closed it. You just opened it again. Not because anything changed, not because someone texted. You opened it because something in your brain told you to, and you listened before you even knew it was talking. You've done this 1,000 times, maybe 10,000. And here's the part no one talks about. It stopped being satisfying a long time ago, months ago, maybe years. You scroll, you find nothing, you put it down, and 90 seconds later, your thumb is already moving. You've heard it 100 times. Dopamine is the pleasure chemical. It floods your brain when something feels good. Chocolate, sex, a notification, and your brain chases that feeling again. That's the habit loop. Charles Duhigg wrote a bestseller about it. Every productivity channel on YouTube will explain it in under 8 minutes. There's just one problem. It's wrong. Not entirely, but wrong in the way that matters most, because dopamine doesn't actually make you feel good. It makes you feel almost satisfied, almost there, almost done. It is the chemical of reaching, not having. The original story goes back to the 1930s. B.F. Skinner put rats in boxes and gave them levers. Press the lever, get a pellet. The rats pressed. Skinner called it operant conditioning, behavior shaped by its consequences. Reward strengthens the behavior. Punishment weakens it. Clean, mechanical, logical. But Skinner noticed something strange. The rats that got a pellet every single time they pressed the lever, they'd eventually stop. Full stomach, no interest. Predictable rewards have an expiration date. The rats that couldn't predict the reward, sometimes a pellet, sometimes nothing, sometimes 3, they pressed obsessively for hours, long past hunger. Skinner called it a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, the most addictive reward pattern ever documented, not because it gives more, because it gives unpredictably. Slot machines use it, social media feeds use it, your inbox uses it. The pellet isn't the point, the uncertainty is. For decades, everyone assumed this was about pleasure. Unpredictable rewards feel better, so animals and humans chase them harder. It was a clean story. It was also incomplete. In 1986, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz was studying monkeys at the University of Freiburg. Simple experiment. A light flashes, juice comes through a tube, the monkey drinks. Schultz was recording dopamine neurons in the midbrain while this happened, and what he found broke a 50-year assumption. At first, dopamine fired when the juice arrived, the reward. That made sense. Pleasure chemical, right? But after a few rounds, the firing shifted. Dopamine stopped responding to the juice and started firing when the light came on. Not the reward, the prediction of the reward. The monkey's brain had learned the pattern. Light means juice. And once it learned that, dopamine had no interest in the juice itself. It had already moved on to the cue, the signal, the moment of anticipation, the wanting. Schultz called this reward prediction error. Dopamine doesn't track what feels good. It tracks the gap between what you expected and what you got. When something is better than expected, dopamine spikes. When it matches your prediction exactly, nothing. Silence. And when the reward doesn't come at all, dopamine crashes below baseline. This is why the 10th bite of cake doesn't taste as good as the first. Your brain predicted it, no error, no dopamine. But the next time you see cake, that craving hits full force because the prediction is still running. And this is what Skinner's variable ratio was actually doing. It wasn't that unpredictable rewards feel better, it's that unpredictable rewards keep the prediction error alive. The brain can never fully learn the pattern, so dopamine keeps firing at the cue every single time. The uncertainty doesn't increase pleasure, it prevents the prediction from ever settling. The wanting never turns off. Your brain doesn't repeat behaviors because they feel good. It repeats them because it predicted they would, even when they don't, even when they haven't for months. A psychologist at the University of Michigan named Kent Berridge spent 20 years untangling this. He found that wanting and liking are not the same system. They use different chemicals, different brain regions, different logic entirely. Liking is opioid, small, fragile, tied to a few tiny clusters in the nucleus accumbens. Hedonic hotspots no bigger than a cubic centimeter. Wanting is dopamine, massive, relentless. It hijacks the entire mesolimbic pathway, ventral tegmental area to nucleus accumbens to prefrontal cortex. You can want something desperately and feel nothing when you get it. Berridge proved this in rats. Boost their dopamine, and they'll work obsessively for a sugar pellet. But when they eat it, no extra pleasure, no additional satisfaction. The liking system didn't move, only the wanting did. That's not a rat problem, that's your phone, your inbox, your refrigerator door at 11 p.m. And there's a second mechanism that makes this worse. When a behavior repeats enough times, your brain physically relocates it. Goal-directed actions, the kind you choose consciously, live in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that weighs consequences, plans ahead, says, maybe not right now. But when a behavior repeats enough, it migrates down into the basal ganglia, into the striatum, into the machinery of procedural memory, the same system that handles walking and breathing and blinking. This is what automaticity actually means. Your brain doesn't forget that the habit exists. It stops consulting you about it. The decision was made so many times that your prefrontal cortex filed it under handled and moved on. Now it runs like a reflex. Cue, response, no deliberation, no conscious choice, no moment where you could have said no, because the question was never asked. This is why willpower fails. Not because you're weak, because you're fighting a system that operates below the floor of consciousness. By the time you notice the urge, your hand is already reaching. The basal ganglia already fired. You're not deciding to check your phone. You're becoming aware that you already did. And the dopamine system makes it worse over time. Tolerance, not a metaphor. Literal receptor downregulation. The same cue triggers the same prediction, but the reward signal gets quieter, so your brain increases the wanting to compensate. More craving, less satisfaction. The gap between wanting and liking stretches wider with every repetition. Berridge calls this incentive salience. The wanting becomes magnified, sensitized, impossible to ignore. The cue screams at you. The reward whispers back. And you keep going, not because it works, because the prediction machine never got the memo that it stopped working. So, what do you actually do with this? First, stop blaming yourself. Just stop is advice designed for a brain that doesn't exist. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution built it to do. Automate repeated behaviors and amplify prediction signals. The fact that those predictions now point at a screen instead of a berry bush doesn't change the engineering. Second, you can't delete a habit. The pathway in the striatum doesn't disappear. Brain imaging studies show former addicts still light up the same circuits years later when exposed to cues. The prediction never fully shuts off, but you can build a competing one. Replacement, not removal. Give the cue a new response, and over enough repetitions, the new pathway gets its own dopamine prediction. That's not a hack. That's the same mechanism running in the other direction. Third, and this is the part that matters most, notice the wanting before the doing. There is a gap. It's small. Sometimes it's less than a second, but it exists. Between the cue firing and the behavior executing, there is a moment where the prediction is running but the action hasn't started. Meditators call it awareness. Psychologists call it cognitive control. Berridge just calls it the space where wanting hasn't become doing yet. That space is the only place where you have leverage. Your habits are not failures of character. They are predictions your brain made so many times it stopped asking whether they were still true. The dopamine isn't chasing pleasure, it's chasing a pattern that worked once, 100 times ago, 1,000 times ago, and never checked back. You are not your habits, but your habits are running the prediction engine that decides what you want next. And the only question that matters isn't whether you have enough willpower, it's whether you can feel the wanting and wait.